My wife left me while I was caring for my dying father. I've been married for 8 years now, and we have 2 kids. I'm also the only son of my sick father. My dad has been struggling with kidney problems for years, but in the last 2 or 3, his condition has worsened. Now, he needs dialysis twice a week, a procedure that filters waste and excess fluids from his body. He used to go by himself, but over the past year, he's been asking me to take him more often. Each day, he's getting weaker. I set up a schedule to drive him to dialysis because I don't want to leave him alone in this state. He needs treatment twice a week, so I pick Saturdays and Wednesdays. Saturdays are easy since it's my day off, and for Wednesdays, I made an arrangement with my boss to leave work early and make up the hours later in the evening. I've been with this company for 10 years, and my boss sees me as a hardworking and reliable employee, so granting me this flexibility wasn't an issue. The problem wasn't at work, it was at home. My wife, Isla, is 34. When she found out I'd be taking my dad to dialysis twice a week, she was upset. She never liked it when I took him occasionally before, but she never openly complained. Now that I've fully committed to this responsibility, she finally let it out. She said I was wasting my time because no matter what I did, my father would never be satisfied with me. For some context, my dad owned a successful trading business and built a solid fortune. He wanted me to follow in his footsteps, but I was passionate about tech. I loved coding. After high school, when he wanted me to take business or management courses, I chose to study programming instead. He tolerated it, as long as I agreed to join his company afterward. But once I got my degree, I took a job at a well-known IT firm. My dad was furious that I chose to work for someone else instead of continuing his legacy. He kept pressuring me to join the family business, and I kept dodging the conversation. When I got married, my father asked me one last time if I'd take over his company. I said no. He lost it. He swore he'd donate all his money to charity, and I wouldn't see a single cent of it. I didn't change my mind. By then, I was earning well. At 29, I bought my own house and car. I was confident I could provide for my family without his money. I told him I didn't need his wealth and could take care of myself. That was the breaking point to our relationship deteriorated. 5 years ago, my mom passed away from a heart attack. It hit my father hard. I had moved out at 17 for university, then work, and I built life. My mom was his only real companion, and losing her was devastating. After that, our relationship started improving. I visited him often, brought my kids to see him, and over time, he softened. Eventually, he stepped away from his business and handed control over to a trust fund. Isla was never close with my parents. When my mom was alive, she avoided visiting, claiming my mother interfered too much in our lives. They never got along. When my dad announced he was cutting me out of his will, Isla openly criticized him and my mom, calling them cruel and selfish. I told her to stay out of my family issues, but she wouldn't let it go. She kept saying this betrayal would affect our future, especially our kids' future. I reassured her that we'd be fine without my father's money, but she refused to listen. Now, with the dialysis situation, Isla lost it. She threw a fit when she found out I'd be driving my dad twice a week. I tried explaining that he has no one else, his own parents are gone, and though he has an older brother, he lives on the other side of the city and barely visits. My dad has been alone since my mom died, and I can't just abandon him. Isla refuses to understand. Lately, she's been making my life miserable. Every Saturday, she suddenly has planned hosting guests, deep cleaning the house, taking the kids out, or even something as trivial as grocery shopping. I told her she can schedule whatever she wants on Sundays because Saturdays are for my dad, but she keeps making plans on Saturdays and then guilt-tripping me for being late or missing out. I often have to rush to pick up my father and take him to dialysis, dealing with her passive-aggressive comments all the way out the door. After dialysis, I drive my father back home, then rush back, only to be met with Isla's sarcastic remarks and petty complaints. It wasn't just Saturdays, she did the same thing on Wednesdays. I had promised my boss that I'd make up for lost work late at night after returning from the clinic, but somehow, Isla always found a way to make my life harder. On those evenings, she'd suddenly have plans meeting her family, catching up with old friends, or attending some random event, leaving me alone with the kids. I had to cook for them, feed the youngest, and somehow finish my work in between, all after a long day at the office and a trip to the dialysis center. My father noticed how stressed and rushed I always was. Many times, he offered to arrange for a nurse to take him instead. He saw how I barely had a moment to breathe, always checking the clock, never lingering even for a second after dropping him off. Even when I picked him up, I'd ask him to be ready and waiting outside to save time. He has a full-time nurse and caregiver, but I still felt guilty for not spending enough time with him. The drive to the clinic takes about 30 minutes. I used to enjoy these trips, talking with my dad about the past, about my kids, reminiscing. But lately, all I could think about was how to get back home as fast as possible. More often than not, I'd speed through shortcuts, overtake cars, just to shave off a few minutes. This was the only real time I had left with my father, and I wasn't willing to let a nurse replace me. I felt like it was my responsibility as his son. But honestly, I was exhausted, completely drained. I couldn't stand this woman anymore. First update. Every day, things got worse. Isla was doing everything in her power to make me stop taking care of my father. Her argument was simply had already cut me out of his will, given his fortune away to charity. So what was the point of wasting my energy on him? I couldn't wrap my head around her logic. Are we only supposed to care about people if there's money involved? What about those whose parents have nothing? Should they just abandon them because there's no financial gain? After listening to her endless whining for months, I finally snapped. I told her, "You're not getting anything from your parents' inheritance either, so why do you still visit them?" Oh, she lost her damn mind. She screamed that her parents had done more for her than my selfish father ever did for me. They had always supported her, unlike my father, who cut me off just because I refused to run his business. She said her dad would never do to her what mine did to me, so I had no right to compare them. Now, fights like this became routine in our house. Almost every Wednesday and Saturday, after I returned from dialysis, another screaming match would break out. Each time, it got uglier. At first, she only argued with me behind closed doors. Now, she had no shame about yelling at me in front of our kids. Worse, she started bad-mouthing my father to them, trying to turn them against both him and me. I overheard it one day and immediately shut that down, which of course led to another explosive fight. At this point, Isla's tantrums had become part of my routine. When she wasn't arguing with me, I almost felt like something was missing. I had mentally checked out. I stopped shouting back, stopped explaining myself. I barely even responded. I just ignored her, like she didn't exist. What else could I do? I wasn't going to abandon my father just to make her happy. I didn't care that he disinherited me. That was my own doing. I refused to take over his company, so he had every right to leave his fortune to someone else. Sometimes, I wonder if this is karma. Maybe I hurt my father by rejecting his dreams, and now I'm paying for it. But then I look at him barely able to move on his own, struggling just to step outside and get into my car, and I know I made the right choice. After dialysis, I used to just drop my father off at home and rush back, but now, I don't care if I take my time. I walk him inside, help him settle in, and make sure he's comfortable. His breathing has gotten worse, so I take it slow, letting him move at his own pace. When I drive, I avoid speeding. I don't want to stress his heart any more than it already is. At this point, it doesn't matter if I get home late. Rushing never helped anyway. If I'm going to deal with my venomous wife no matter what, I might as well take my time and make sure my father is happy. But my new, more relaxed attitude only made things worse at home. Yesterday, Isla gave me an ultimatum, her or my father. I tried to reason with her, explaining that my dad wouldn't be around forever. Given his condition, he didn't have much time left. Her response? Then you need to decide what matters more, the person who will be with you for life, or the one who will be dead soon. That was it for me. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You know what? I'd rather choose my father than a snake who spits venom at a dying man." She packed her bags and left. I didn't stop her. She needed time to cool off, and I needed a damn break from all the constant fighting. While she was gone, I managed everything work: the house, the kids, and my father. And you know what? I felt at peace. The house was quiet. No screaming, no guilt trips, just peace. Then, 2 days ago, I received divorce papers. I wasn't surprised, but I didn't think she'd pull the trigger this fast. I was shocked for a moment, but deep down, I felt relief. Real, genuine relief. I didn't even call her. I just signed the papers and sent them back. That's when she lost it. She called me screaming, "How could you just sign them without even trying to fight for me, without even calling me?" The irony. Then her mother grabbed the phone and started shouting, "A real man would have tried to win his wife back, not just signed everything like it was nothing." That was the funniest thing I'd heard in a long time. Why the hell would I do that? Isla wanted a divorce, I just did her a favor. No fuss, no drama, simple, done. Just to twist the knife a little, I pointed out that she didn't even ask for custody of the kids. She didn't want them. She fired back that I could keep everything, the house, the kids, all of it. She wanted nothing. Her mother chimed in, saying Isla was still young and didn't want the burden of raising children. I told them both that it suited me just fine. My kids were staying with me, and that was all that mattered. I won. Update 2. I moved into my father's house with the kids. Best decision I ever made. This was good for all of us. My dad got to spend time with his grandkids, and they got a loving grandfather who actually cared about them. He had a full-time nurse who agreed to look after my kids for extra pay. Honestly, it was perfect, as safe, loving environment with someone always there to help. Seeing my father laugh and play with my children, watching them run around the house and fill it with life, it made everything worth it. Isla never saw this coming. She thought divorcing me would ruin my life, that I'd be drowning under all the responsibility raising the kids, taking care of my father, managing work, running a household. She thought I'd beg her to come back. Instead, I thrived. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Update 3. Sad news. Last week, my father passed away in his sleep. He went to bed happy after playing with my kids, and he never woke up. The doctor said he didn't suffer. His nurse and even the house staff told me that after we moved in, he seemed more alive than ever. That extra time with his grandkids gave him something to hold on to. It probably extended his life by a few more months. Losing my only parent has been devastating, but I'm at peace knowing he spent his last days happy, surrounded by love. My kids miss him too, but they remember his lessons. He always told them that life moves forward no matter what, and that we should accept change instead of dwelling in sadness. Hearing them repeat his words gives me strength when I feel like breaking down. Then came the biggest shock of all. My father's lawyer contacted me, asking me to come in for the reading of his will. I told him it wasn't necessary. My father had made it clear he donated everything to charity. I was fine with that. I wasn't expecting anything. I even asked if I needed to vacate the house, assuming it had also been donated. That's when the lawyer broke the news. My father had actually left everything to me. The house, the business, the entire estate. I was speechless. I asked the lawyer if my father had recently changed his will. I assumed he did it after I started taking care of him. The lawyer just smiled and told me that I had always been the sole heir. My father never changed his will. I broke down in tears. All those years, I thought he had abandoned me. Maybe he only threatened to disinherit me because he wanted me to take over his business, but he never actually went through with it. He had always planned to leave everything to me. The lawyer tried to console me, but I couldn't stop crying. I told him it was eating me alive how I spent my whole life resenting my father, thinking he didn't care, when in reality, he had always looked out for me. Then the lawyer said something that shook me. My father had been proud of me. Proud that I never gave up on my passion, even under his pressure. Proud that I refused wealth in order to chase my own dreams. He was proud of me. The lawyer then told me that I was now officially the head of my father's business. If I wanted, I could reclaim it from the trust and run it myself. I think I will. I've achieved everything I wanted in my own field. And in a way, my father always supported me, even if it didn't seem like it at the time. Now, it's my turn to honor him. I want to take back the company and build it into something even greater, something that would make him proud. When I got home, I told my kids about their grandfather's will. He had set aside a portion of his fortune for them when they turned 18. Today, we visited his grave. We laid flowers, and we stood there in silence for a long time. This has been one of the hardest moments of my life. Update 4. The ants smell sugar. You know how ants always come back when they sense sugar? A month after my father's passing, I officially took over his business. First, I quit my job to focus entirely on running the company. Then, I rented out my old house. Me kids wanted to stay in their grandfather's home, and honestly, so did I. That house held my childhood memories. It kept my father's presence alive. And then, As soon as word got out that I had inherited millions, my doorstep turned into a circus. Long-lost relatives, old friends, and neighbors who barely spoke to me before suddenly started showing up, all smiles and fake sympathy. But the most unexpected visitor? My ex-wife, Isla. She came with her parents. They waltzed in, crying dramatically, saying they had no idea my father had died. Otherwise, of course, they would have come to the funeral. Her parents kept rambling about how much they respected my father. Isla hugged our kids, sobbing about how much she had missed them. I just stared at her. If you missed them so much, why didn't you visit even once in the past 8 months? She fumbled. Then she said, I did. I came to our old house, but it was closed. What a joke. So you saw the house was empty and… What? You didn't think to call? Didn't wonder where your children were? She had no answer. That's when her parents decided to step in. Let's put the past behind us, they suggested. Now that Grandpa is gone, the kids shouldn't be alone at home while their father works. They need their mother. You two should reconcile. I laughed in their faces. My kids needed their mother when she abandoned them. They needed her when I was breaking my back to keep everything together. Now, they were used to her absence, and I wasn't letting her back into my life. Isla started crying, and her parents left us alone. She grabbed my hands and begged me to take her back. I love you. I miss you. I miss our family. I smirked and said, You don't love me. You love my father's money. Her expression changed instantly. You and your greedy parents showed up here hoping to get a piece of my inheritance. You called my father selfish and cruel when we divorced. Now that he's gone, you suddenly want back in? I didn't regret a single word. She lost it. She shouted that she had been trying to make things work because she cared about me. But now, she was going to take what was rightfully hers. She stormed out, vowing to sue me for half of my father's fortune. I didn't even flinch. Later, I spoke to my lawyer. He reassured me that she had no chance of getting anything. Our divorce had been finalized a year before I inherited anything. And since the kids stayed with me, she couldn't demand alimony. However, he warned me if she started spending more time with the kids, she could manipulate them and later try to claim custody. If that happened, she could demand child support, which would put money in her pocket. I took his advice seriously. From that moment on, I watched her like a hawk. Every interaction with the kids was monitored. I refused to let her use them as a tool to milk me for money. Right now, my focus is on my children. I spend as much time with them as possible, helping them cope with losing their grandfather. I don't want them to seek comfort from their mother and risk falling into her trap. Now that I run my father's company, I have more flexibility in my schedule. I can balance work and family on my own terms. And to celebrate, I'm taking my kids on vacation to the Bahamas. Why not? They deserve it. It's not about the money. I could have afforded this trip before, but between work and caring for my father, I never had the time. Now I do. As for Isla, she hasn't contacted me since her dramatic exit. I assume she's busy hunting for a lawyer. Let her try. Thank you for your attention. Subscribe, leave a like, and have a great day.